Data protection and privacy teams are under more pressure than ever with new laws, AI oversight, data breaches, and the constant expectation to do more with fewer resources.
That's why TrustArc built a modern privacy and data protection management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. It unifies your tools, automates the work that slows you down, and surfaces what matters most right when you need it.
From guided quick actions to our intelligent assistant, Ask Arc, you get credible, contextual answers backed by expert research, not generic AI guesses.
Finally, privacy that works the way privacy pros work.
Learn how TrustArc helps teams move faster with confidence at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.
You're listening to Serious Privacy, powered by TrustArc. Here are your hosts, Dr. Kay Royal and Paul Breitbart.
A few weeks ago, we promised you we would spend more time discussing health data, and so we do. Today, we have a guest joining us, Irith Kist. Irith is the Data Protection Officer at the Netherlands Cancer Institute, also a member of the Data Protection Advisory Commission of the City of Amsterdam. However, she is also a health data researcher herself. And on the 5th of June, she will defend her dissertation at Leiden University called A Fair Balance, Health Data Protection and the Promotion of Health Data Use for Clinical and Research Purposes. And we think that's a great topic to discuss on this week's episode.
Yes,
My name is Paul Breitbart.
And I'm Kay Royal, and welcome to Serious Privacy. So, Irith, as you may know, I am very, very excited about this topic. Being a former nurse, registered nurse from a long line of nurses, my daughter just graduated as a doctor, and I was an oncology and hospice nurse, no less. So I was really excited to have you on here, something I feel very strongly about. But before we get there, we have the unexpected question. To be fair, people, this was the second question I read when I opened up a list of questions, but it's perfect.
Oh,
What sport would you compete in if you were in the Olympics?
Oh, either track or gymnastics. I'm a marathon runner, and I used to be in gymnastics before I switched to marathon running. And before that,
impressive.
in high school, I did the 440 80-yard dash. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That was not a hard question at all.
No, not at all. Not at all. And to prepare for my defense, I also ran the half marathon of Leiden. That's the city where I'm going to defend my thesis.
Nice.
So I thought it would be good to combine my athletic ambitions together with my academic ambition.
Combine your passion.
And it was a very warm edition this year, wasn't it?
Well, it was warm, but I love to run in warm weather. So I was prepared. I did not push it too much. It was perfect for me. Yes, it was a wonderful, wonderful track. Yeah.
Nice. Paul.
Okay, you know I'm not the biggest sportsman on earth. Understatement.
Paul had to laugh when I came out with this question because neither he or I.
But if I were to compete in the Olympics, it would have to be crew.
Ooh.
So rowing.
Very nice.
That's I did a bit of rowing in university, never at any high level, only very friendly competitions. But I really enjoyed it. And it's also the one sport where if you have never done any crew in your life and you start university and you do your first trainings, you can get to the Olympics in a few years' time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I've seen actually people do it.
Yeah.
6 years of crew and winning an Olympic medal.
Oh, wow.
Just starting at university. It's a sport you can learn very fast. And it's nice because you're outside, you're on the water. It's not always nice weather. It's sometimes really early, but that also makes that, when it's early mornings on the water, sun rising, there's also something romantic about that.
It is. That sounds amazing. Y'all make me sit here and wonder what in God's name could I say that I could possibly compete in when I have done
Well,
zero
you asked the question.
athlete. I know, right? You know what? I'm going to go with one that's the only activity I was ever very active in, although I never competed, was never on any teams because we were very poor and, the girl wasn't worth paying to compete in anything. Swimming. Mm-hmm. I was an incredibly, incredibly strong swimmer. At 3 years old, I was swimming the Olympic pool. If I had a pool now and actually enjoyed going out in the heat and getting in the water that's too cold for me, I would still swim. But I don't. But y'all make me go, maybe I should.
Yeah, you might want to do that.
Extra poundage here that could benefit from some athleticism here. So there we go. So let's dive in.
Maybe reconsider that pool in the new garden
Maybe.
or in the basement.
Maybe. I've always wanted one of the, what do you call it? This swimming pool. It's the one with the wave
The
motion
infinite,
that you just...
the one, where you swim against the waves.
Yeah. So the pool itself is only 12 feet long or whatever, but you swim against the wave of the water moving. The other way that I've seen it done is you still need the same size pool, but rather than the expense of the water moving, you anchor yourself to something off the side of the pool. And that way you're constantly swimming against the thing that's holding you. And
it would be really healthy, right? To do some swimming. So with that, let's move into health data.
Yes, there you go. Nice segue there. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So let's move into health data.
Yeah.
Irith, I just read out the title of your PhD, but can you tell us a bit more? What is it actually about?
Yes, what I tried to find in my research is the balance between the data protection of health data on the one hand, and of course, the necessary data sharing for both care and research purposes on the other. When the first day when I started working here at the Netherlands Cancer Institute, I realized that, of course, health data are sensitive data and need very, very, very thorough protection. But at the same time, cancer research cannot take place without the data sharing. We at the Netherlands Cancer Institute, or not we, but our wonderful medical teams, they cure cancer types of which, for instance, there's one patient here in Holland, there's one patient in Portugal, one patient in the US, one patient in Brazil. And you need to share those data across the globe because, the findings that you could have in data sharing.
Yeah. And the patients want you to. I've never met a patient that's undergoing something that would say, oh, no, don't share my data because I don't want anyone else to benefit from anything that I'm going through, good or bad.
True.
Patients always want to share that data because they want others' treatment to be better or progress to be better based on information they might learn from their case.
Exactly. And rarely it does occur when, for instance, people have their beliefs, their ethical values, and perfectly fine. If you don't feel comfortable in data sharing, then, you're more than welcome not to do that. But yes, you're so right. Patients tell us here in interviews, if my children or grandchildren or, the future generations can benefit from the research carried out on my data, I'm more than happy to contribute.
Right.
So, and then of course, when I realized that, and after having talked to patients and to colleagues here, I learned that in the Netherlands, we are still facing multiple questions surrounding data sharing. And also with the General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, in Europe, we still have a fragmented landscape in data sharing. So, the Netherlands Cancer Institute works closely, let's say, with hospitals in Germany, UK, Spain, you name it. And yet the various legal bases that are still used for data sharing in cancer research still vary. So the data are not shared and research does not start. So that was the second reason. And then, of course, the third reason is I started my research in February 2020. So that was in Holland, a couple of weeks prior to the pandemic, the start of the pandemic. And then it became even more important that it was of utmost importance to learn from each other about what happens to the populations in the world. Yeah.
Well, and the way treatment worked over COVID was not the way that treatment worked before COVID. People did not have the personal support of their loved ones in the hospital with them. And a lot of doctor visits went to being remote. If they were not in a facility, they went to being remote. That always takes a little bit away from the information you gather as well, because you don't have as much visual input or tertiary input coming from that. But on the other hand, remote visits also meant that patients usually saw their doctors more often because maybe they were located in a place that was hard to travel to or something like that. So was that anything that impacted your research at all?
I did not focus on that part because that has to do with the measures that you actually take in how is the contact between the practitioner and between the patient, in fact. However, what I did write in one of my articles is that the triangle between the care provider, the care recipient, and in case a person is not able to decide for himself, the formal or informal representative, that triangle is so important because the patient trusts his doctor or his nurse or the health practitioners he or she visits. So it's of utmost importance that that triangle of relationships continues to exist, and that continue to exist also throughout COVID. In Holland, of course, and I do advocate the fact that there is a strong favor for this personal informational self-determination, the autonomy of the patient, shared decision-making. I do applaud that. At the same time, I do notice from our patients that they want to be informed. However, they not necessarily do want to voice their yes or no themselves. They want to be informed. They want to know what the research institute or the hospital does with his or her data, yet do not want to reach that decision over and over and over again if he gives permission for the use of his data or not.
Consent fatigue, huh?
So how do you inform a patient that is so much focusing on getting better that maybe not all information may land? It's complex, especially when data will be used for further research. How should we decide what information to provide and what to explain later or in a different way?
Right.
I can imagine that's a continuous struggle.
Yes. One of my recommendations in my research has been that 3 pillars are important in the communication. First, communicate on different levels. Some patients want to be informed and want to use the internet. Some patients still want to have an information leaflet in their hands. Some patients want to be able to call our information center. And some patients want to hear the information from their health practitioner themselves. So first of all, the level of communication should be fourfold, I would say. Then it's of utmost importance also that you have layers of information. Some people just want to hear, your data are going to be used for further research. Is that all right? And some people would like to hear, but what type of research? Can I read more about it? Can you, for instance, publish research that has taken place with, well, not necessarily my personal data, but with data in general of the patients?
Right.
And of course, the information should be in a clear language for the general population. It should not be too difficult, should not be too easy. And I always advise to have the information available in several languages. We are a multicultural country in Holland. I love that. And I think we should admit that, yes, we have patients from all over the world in our country. And, the information should be available in more than one language, and not only in Dutch and English, but in more languages. Yeah.
Right.
Well, especially at the Netherlands Cancer Institute, which is also a renowned research center and treatment center, right? So
yes, throughout the world.
Patients also come specifically to your center to be treated from all around the world.
Exactly. Yes.
So when I talk about health research and research data, and that it's complex and that maybe we need to do more, oftentimes the argument you hear back is, yes, but GDPR has the general exception in Article 39 for all kinds of research, so that should suffice. Why doesn't it?
Yes, very good question. And allow me to dig into the legal details.
Yes, please.
Of the GDPR. See, first of all, for the use of personal data in general, there needs to be a legal basis. And we find the legal basis, the 6 legal basis in Article 6 of the GDPR. For health data, there needs to be an exemption to the general prohibition that sensitive data, among which health data, cannot be used for other purposes if an exemption cannot be invoked. And then, of course, for health research, we have Article 89, in which, a further specification is given as regards the further use of data for health research. Now, here comes the complication. One is that one of the exemptions to the prohibition of the use of health data for research is consent. The consent needs to be free, specific, unambiguous, and voluntarily. And of course, you may wonder, well, but if a patient comes here, can he give specific consent for the use of his data for research? Because research at the outset may not be clear as to what will be investigated in the long run. We have studies that continue for 20, 30, 40 years. So consent might not be the most wonderful legal basis to use. Furthermore, if you want to give a more broad consent, then of course, recital 33 of the GDPR states, well, that consent still should not be too broad. We have to decide on the granularity of consent. And of course, you would need to be as specific as possible. So that about the legal basis of consent and the exemption to the prohibition. Then, of course, some countries do use the legal basis of the general interest, the public interest, and the legitimate interests. And together with, of course, the exemption of health research in Article 9(2)(j) of the GDPR, together with Article 89. Holland, however, has not granted that exemption as one of the possible options in health research in Holland. So in Holland, the legal basis to be used is consent. If not, if you fulfill a number of obligations to be met in the Dutch sectoral legislation of health law, then still you need to fulfill those obligations, and you could use the data with what we call the so-called opt-out. So the patients do not have to explicitly consent, but they do not object to the use of their data. And the system is complicated, in my view, because, as I said, in Europe, with different legal bases, you see that the GDPR has created a fragmented landscape. And in Dutch sectoral law, what we see is that some hospitals use the explicit consent, and some other hospitals still use what we call the opt-out, the no objection system.
Yeah, it's a fairly difficult situation. And others have called in the past, and I don't recall exactly whom, but for additional legal basis to be included in the GDPR. Yeah. So in Article 6, to have a specific legal basis for health data and health research there. Are you in favor of that?
Well,
or do you see better solution?
Yes, thank you. In my article, in my thesis on the comparison that I made between the UK developments after Brexit and the mainland development, the UK is also contemplating to have a separate legal basis for health research or for research in general. And in my view, legislation is a means. Legislation is not the end result, because still the law needs to be implemented. That's one hesitation that I have with additional legislation. Two, if you were to include a next legal basis, I do think that we still have the same questions raised, namely, okay, well, what then is health research? Who can carry out health research? So first, in my view, there should be a common understanding about the fact that we do want, and we as in Europe, we do want to share our data for scientific research purposes. in my view, the current legal basis leave enough room for carrying out health research, yet the interpretation of consent, but also the interpretation of the other legal basis that, for instance, what is a public interest and what is a legitimate interest, still leave room for ambiguity and for questions to be raised and to be said between the research institutes. I'm not going to share my data because I'm not sure that your legal basis will be upheld in our country. And then we're stuck. The European Health Data Space now, of course, proposes solutions to this issue with regard to health data for primary and secondary use. However, secondary use, the definition of secondary use in the European Health Data Space does not coincide with further processing in the GDPR. So still, there needs to be clarity about the definitions of further processing and the secondary use of health data.
I get it. One of the topics you mentioned when we discussed for you to come on to the podcast is the risks that you observe with technological innovation, wearable smartwatches, probably also artificial intelligence, all those kind of things.
Right.
What do you say about that in your writings?
Yes. Did you see that look on her face, Paul? She was like,
I did, yes. It's almost like you were making a face, right, Kate?
Right. I mean, mirror images here. Yes. It's exhausting to think of all the complications and prohibitions on using sensitive data and then all the other things that you heap on top of it. That's like, oh, but wait, what about this? Yeah.
Yes.
But also the benefits that a smartwatch can have. I mean, I see a lot of research being done supported by Apple and Google, and whether that's good or not, I'll leave that up to the experts. But with a lot of data that is gathered via the smartwatches, so I can also imagine that there are positives here as well.
There are, and I'll give you a personal one myself. I didn't start using a smartwatch until the Android one came out with fall detection, because I tend to fall. I have a lot of disabilities. I love it when doctors like, so have you fallen? I'm like, in how long?
Oh my gosh.
I have severe neuropathy in my feet. I can't usually feel my feet, so I fall. It's not a big deal. People on the street think I'm drunk because I'm falling for no reason. But hey, those are things you get over. But also, a certain medication I was taking was messing with my heart, and I was using the EKG function on the watch. I get it. It's not a medical EKG. However, it did give me enough knowledge to say, you know what? I should probably go see a doctor about this. And I wound up having to come off the medication. So they do have significant benefit.
Yes. And of course, I also see here at the Netherlands Cancer Institute that it's marvelous what computers can see with their eyes, so to speak, what a human being cannot see with his or her eyes. So technology is a fact. Innovations are a fact, and innovations will proceed.
Yeah.
Having said that,
there's always a but.
Having said that,
I'm going to dig into the situation of the individual that, yes, uses wearables, that, yes, going to buy a DNA test on the internet. And then it becomes a bit tricky. Imagine that and that's the example that my colleague and I, with whom I wrote the article, were using in this chapter. Imagine that I bought this DNA test on the internet. And imagine that the results came back and it said, oh, you know what? You're doing all right now, but you might have genetic disease that you did not know of. Oh, there's no doctor involved yet.
Right.
But I now have received that information. And it might all sound a bit science fiction here, but it's not.
It's not.
It does occur in the world. There's no doctor there. There's no practitioner-patient relationship yet because I just bought this on the internet.
Right.
What then is my protection? And also the critical question that you could pose, of course, is, well, do I need to be protected since I wanted to get that information for myself? In my view, since it still concerns sensitive data, health data, I would say that yes, I as a person then would need protection. And not only as regards my health and my well-being, but also as regards the further processing of this data. What would this company do with this data? Would data be shared with others? How will I be protected in a sense with my personal health data? So yes, I do.
Let's be clear. It depends on where that company is located too.
Oh, of course. Yeah. That goes without saying. Of course. Yeah. So of course I do applaud innovations and AI, and at the same time, I'm hesitant as to, well, what is the end, and how could the patient-doctor relationship still be there, or should there be another relation?
Right.
Yeah.
And we also see this arise in other similar situations. So here in the United States, they've issued the health information blocking rule, which means that people cannot be blocked from having their information. It's driving a lot of compatibility between electronic record systems. And it applies, to medical, not necessarily to these side variations. One of the things that that it addresses is the fact that when it first came out and was looking at being implemented, one of the things that was an exception was that you could block information from a patient if it was for the patient's safety and well-being. And so I, of course, interpreted that, well, yeah, if you're running lab results and you don't know if a tumor is benign or cancerous, then you don't want to give the result to the patient without talking to the doctor, because they could see that, as you're saying, see a lab result come back and absolutely freak out because they don't have a medical professional explaining the results of this to them. Yep. So I had, at the time, advised one of my consulting clients that, yes, that would be an exception, but you probably can't go too far. You might be able to withhold it for up to 48 or 72 hours, and then the doctor needs to be on the phone with them explaining it. You can't withhold it for 30 days or 90 days. Turns out that when they implemented it and came out with the guidelines, and one of the examples they used, well, what about if a lab result is very bad and carries very bad potential repercussions for the patient? Can we withhold that for, up to a certain time period in order to give the medical practitioner time to talk to them? And the answer was no. That is illegal information blocking. And even if that person was to see the result, completely freak out, have a heart attack, and die, because that was just horrible information to them, doesn't matter. You cannot block the information from them. And so now I've noticed when I log into my medical portals and I go to look at lab results or test results, there is a statement up there. This has not been reviewed by a practitioner. This has not been discussed with the person. Please reach out to us if you have questions, because most people don't have the medical knowledge to interpret the black and white findings.
Exactly. And people start looking on the internet.
Dr. Google.
What could be. We have had similar situation here at not only the Netherlands Cancer Institute, but in Dutch hospitals in general. We used to have the situation that we had lab results, for instance, and there would be a time where a consult with the patient was made so that, the doctor or the health practitioner would see the patient, and then the data would be published. Yet patients' organizations said, no. We want to have access to our lab results, our data immediately. So that's the situation now that, yes, you could access your data immediely. On the one hand, that sounds good. You could access your data, but I fully agree with you that many times, people start interpreting. You see figures, you see numbers, you see information that you think you could interpret, yet as a non-medical profession, you cannot interpret. So here we have the right to information, but also, in my view, sometimes the right not to be informed also weighs just as much.
It should work, right?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
It should.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also here you see a difference between the North American and to some extent British approach and the more continental European one, where America especially is much further ahead when it comes to electronic patient files and digitization of results. I recall about a decade ago, we had a very strong debate here in the Netherlands about interoperability of patient files and accessibility of patient files and having everything in one single patient file or not. Parliament then decided, no, that goes too far, and it should be for the patient to decide what information is shared with whom. Is that in any way or form also hindering research? The fact, or is it only hindering certain forms of treatment that information is not available to all of the medical practitioners all of the time?
I would say both. See, in Holland, we have the different consent mechanisms. So imagine, and I start again with a practical example, imagine that my GP, my general practitioners, sends me to a regional hospital. And the regional hospital then sends me to the Netherlands Cancer Institute. When I'm at the Netherlands Cancer Institute, I tell the Netherlands Cancer Institute, oh, but 10 years ago, I was treated for a different type of cancer in hospital Y in the Netherlands. Then the Netherlands Cancer Institute would need to ask permission from me first before it can receive the data from the hospital where I was treated 10 years ago. That's Dutch law, it's not European law, it's Dutch law. And that is not progressing the information that the doctor needs to have about me to have a clear picture about me.
Right.
So in my view, it hinders the speedy treatment of patients. And here we are talking still about a situation where I can speak, where I can talk.
Right.
Of course, we've seen during the pandemic where patients literally could not speak or talk. And yet the right information about the medical history, about the medicine use was not provided in time when they were in the emergency situation. Yeah. Then when we talk about research, what has become apparent is that information with regard to certain population groups is not included in research. So we are facing a new form of discrimination, I would say, where data from people across the globe are not included in the proper features, in the proper division, simply because we do not have the data from certain groups, certain populations, certain minorities throughout the world.
Well, and not to mention that some of this research grew up over time. And an example I can give is the symptoms of a heart attack. That medical information grew over time based on men who were working hard and working long hours and drinking and smoking and doing whatever. And it turns out the symptoms of a heart attack in a woman differ. But so many women were dismissed from the emergency room or from their physician's offices because, no, you're having a panic attack, because their symptoms of an MI showed up differently. So it could be something as simple as gender, but it could also be something much more profound, such as certain ethnicity have a proclivity for certain diseases. Sickle cell anemia is only available in certain populations. Some populations have an extreme sensitivity to certain medications. You cannot use it on them. They're not allergic per se. They may never have taken the medication because it's something that their population cannot pay.
Exactly.
And have a profound difference on it. And so this is one of the things that makes me very concerned about information not being able to be shared. You don't have to go to the levels of information on tumor registries or donation registries or anything like that. It could be something as simple as population groups.
Exactly. And it's very important also when we talk about for instance, the registries for diabetes, for cancer, for heart attacks, you name it. And it's important that those registries have 100% coverage. And if you're going to leave out, certain numbers of patients, then of course you might have a bias in your research data.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it could have an impact both in care and in research if we are not able to share the data that is needed. What I do see at the same time is that, of course, those data need to be protected, needs to have the security, and the patients need to be informed and need to be able to say, no, I don't feel comfortable about this. That's their right as well.
Right.
Yes.
Well, and here, one of the things that we have HIPAA, that's the predominant medical health law here in the United States.
Yeah.
You will find here that doctors and facilities too will ask for the patient's signature to acquire their records from another physician. That's not required under HIPAA. You don't need the patient's written consent to get their treatment records. If it's for treatment especially, you don't need a patient's consent to get those. HIPAA was never intended to block treatment of a patient. And sometimes it's as simple as someone's in the hospital, they can't speak, they can't act, and yet the doctors won't talk to, or even if they can, maybe something else is going on. And the doctors will say they can't talk to the spouse or the daughter or the caretaker or whoever is in the room with the person taking care of them because HIPAA prevents it. It actually doesn't. HIPAA gives the treating provider the discretion to communicate with a caretaker if they believe it is in the best interest of the patient.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
As long as the patient has not specifically said, do not tell this person or something. But generally, they don't exclude specific people from being able to tell. One of the other interesting differences in healthcare is that if they came up with a relatively new rule that if a person pays for healthcare in cash, they can request that that information not be provided to their provider, another provider, or to their insurance company. So it doesn't go on their record. So if I wanted to find out if I was susceptible to a particular genetic disease, I could pay for it in cash, and then they would be prohibited from sharing that information with my insurance company or filing something on it. And so that's another way that they're giving people autonomy over some of their health data under certain circumstances with that as well. And I always thought that was a very unique provision to have in a law, and I don't know that that's present anywhere else, or is it? Or does it not need to be present anywhere else?
It's not present in our laws, in the Dutch laws, neither is it in the GDPR. The GDPR is a framework regulation, of course, does not prohibit or prescribe anything. It gives a framework. I do understand that patients, when they have concerns about data sharing, they're largely spoken. There are two concerns they have, and that is, the use of their data only for commercial purposes. That is one.
Okay.
And the second hesitation or the second concern they have is that their data be shared with financial companies or insurance companies. And then, for instance, in their future life, they're not allowed anymore to buy a home and to have a mortgage on their home. So I fully understand that, if you go back to what is the patient confidentiality about, it is about the fact that you as a patient should be able to go to your doctor and to share anything and everything with him without it being used against you in the future. I fully agree with that. But that has nothing to do with the fact, in my view, if fully pseudonymized or even anonymized data are used for further research to promote health care and the community of care in the world. Yeah.
We are coming to the end of the recording, also looking at the time.
Oh, yes.
But before we wrap up, as I think a final point, what recommendations do you make in your dissertation on how to improve this landscape?
Yes. In short, I'll be short and precise. First, be clear about the legal basis, whether it be consent, whether it be public interest, whether it be legitimate interest, and approve from each other the use of the various legal bases. Perhaps the European Health Data Space is going to solve that. Second, be open-minded about, if you were to use consent as a legal basis, be open-minded about, the granularity of consent and how broad it should be in my view. Third, as regards compliance, focus on risk-based compliance rather than rule-based compliance. Focus on preventive actions rather than and repairing the situation. And also it applies to the data protection authorities to also have a look together how we can prevent the situation beforehand. And fourth, with regards to, of course, the patients throughout the world, make sure we inform all patients, all civilians in a transparent, in an open, and in a manner that is understandable for the patients throughout the world as well. So be accountable for the actions, be transparent as a data controller, and be open to your patients at all times.
Can I just add, and be
course.
honest? Sorry, I was a cancer research nerd.
Yeah.
I ran up against a lot of doctors not being honest. So, be honest.
Honest, transparent, in my view, has in it also, to be honest. Yes.
And ethical and all that good stuff built into it. Absolutely. Okay,
course.
Paul,
Yeah.
I will quit asking questions.
Well, first of all, let's say good luck with the defense of your
you're going to blow it away.
dissertation.
You're going to be fine.
Oh, yeah.
I'm fairly confident as well. There is actually a live video stream for the defense. Will it be in English or in Dutch?
No, unfortunately, it will be in Dutch.
It will be in Dutch.
I will send you the dissertation itself is in English. So I will, of course, send you the link to my dissertation after the 5th of June.
Well, I can I can just cheer you on without understanding what you're saying.
You could do that.
Probably at the absolutely wrong point.
But yeah, thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to any future cooperation and to hear from you about the future podcasts as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if anybody has suggestions or ideas or wants to join this debate, feel free to do so on our LinkedIn page. You'll find us as Serious Privacy. You will find Kay on social media as Heart of Privacy, myself as Europol B. Thank you for joining us for yet another episode of Serious Privacy. Until next week.
Yeah. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye, y'all.
That was Serious Privacy.
If you're a data protection or privacy professional, you already know the pressure. Non-stop regulatory change, AI oversight, internal demands, and the expectation to somehow stay ahead of it all. And the old patchwork of tools just isn't cutting it anymore.
No. That's why TrustArc created a modern privacy management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. The TrustArc platform brings your workflows, evidence, research, tasks, and applications all together in one unified and intelligent workspace so you don't waste time digging, clicking, or context switching.
With Ask Arc, your privacy assistant, you can ask plain language questions about laws, jurisdictions, or even your own program data, and get credible, cited answers based on NIMBY research and more than 1,000 global laws. It's explainable, transparent, and purpose-built for data protection and privacy.
So if you need to add a vendor, create a cookie banner, or start an assessment, quick actions take formally complex tasks, turn them into bite-sized guided workflows to save you time.
It's a platform that thinks like you, works like you, and helps you move faster with confidence, whether you're a seasoned DPO or you're just getting started.
See how modern privacy gets done. Explore Arc at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.